We'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
And next time in Moscow.
Oh.
Putin sold Venezuela to Trump. Now China's turn is on the horizon. Russia would claim half of Europe and Africa, while Trump would take East Asia and Greenland. The world would be reordered from scratch, much like the global division that occurred between Russians and Americans in the past. According to the New York Times, Putin offered Trump Venezuela in exchange for Ukraine. That's what the newspaper reported. Putin understands that Trump holds the keys to ending the war, specifically the war in Ukraine. As a businessman, Trump has always been focused on the price. Venezuela alone, with the world's largest proven oil reserves, wasn't enough to satisfy him. Venezuela's wealth extends far beyond oil. Its soil is rich with minerals and precious resources. From Russia's perspective, this might be enough to satisfy Trump, who has spent considerable time with Nicolas Maduro. Yet he maintains this relationship quietly, alongside his wife and his leadership of the United States, all despite widespread international criticism. But this can be understood within the context of what has historically transpired between Russians and Americans, a dynamic that certainly doesn't stop at Venezuela's borders. We've been following this closely for months, particularly since Trump's return to the White House for his second term. As RT Arabic reports, Trump's administration is working to separate Russia from China and restore American global dominance. Let's recall the numerous American statements that have consistently identified Beijing, not Moscow, as the greatest threat to Washington. Western discourse has frequently centered on China's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In fact, many argue it was China that wanted to expand the conflict, a way to exhaust the West. While this also drained their ally Moscow, from China's perspective it was worth it. They were the real winners. The Russians know that the Ukraine war has benefited Beijing far more, and China's relations with Europe have flourished. China has also capitalized on Russian energy resources sold at heavily discounted prices. This was possible because Western sanctions forced Russia to sell to China at a loss. Therefore, the Russia-China relationship isn't an alliance built on sentiment. It's driven by self-interest and exploitation. Russia previously exploited the West's focus on confronting China to rebuild its own strength. Now Beijing is exploiting the West's and Russia's preoccupation with Putin to continue its meteoric rise. What if Russia and the West had paid attention to China's game? The truth is, some argue they did notice, but by then, it was too late to contain China. So if Venezuela is the price for Ukraine, or Ukraine the price for Venezuela, what is the price of China? In other words, what would Moscow accept in exchange for betraying its alliance with Beijing? And more importantly, what does America have to offer Russia to convince them to turn against China in the first place? Perhaps what Moscow truly wants from the West is something it has long sought globally. Under Putin, Russia doesn't want a secondary role. It refuses to be marginalized. Instead, it seeks a seat at the table with the great powers, as it enjoyed for over a century and a half during the Soviet era when it divided the world with America after World War II. Russia plays its game strategically. It inherited numerous spheres of influence worldwide, and many of them have proven valuable. Assad's Syria is a prime example. By supporting him against Western and Turkish pressure, Russia gained new footholds in West Africa. Similarly, through Syria, Russia expanded its influence in Libya and East Africa, securing other strategic interests. Russia also wants to secure its borders everywhere, especially in Europe, and is working to bring them back under its sphere. Russia seeks a corridor through Eastern Europe to the warm waters of the Mediterranean, so it doesn't remain dependent on Turkey. This requires reasserting control over Eastern European nations, including Poland, the strongest in the region. Poland is a NATO member and the leading Eastern European power. This might sound insane. Russia wants to encircle NATO to achieve its ambitions. The idea isn't entirely opposed, except for Trump's repeated statements questioning NATO's usefulness. Trump talks about the Western Hemisphere as his sphere of influence, including annexing Greenland, which is under Danish sovereignty and represents one of Russia's strategic interests globally. Just imagine if Russia threatened the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Interestingly, Trump accused Norway of not giving him the Nobel Peace Prize. Yet these are the countries that would need to defend themselves from Russia. To be clear, America is the only power capable of standing up to Russia. Trump's America doesn't offer its services for free, though both nations have something to offer each other if they choose. Ultimately, Russia remains a country the West counts on, no matter how far it strays. From the Western perspective, Russia is part of the Christian world, closer to them than communist China. The West would rather Russia have influence and a seat at the table, sharing in wealth, civilization, religion, and culture, even if just in form. So as you await what's being called the New World Order, don't overlook these details. And don't ignore China's response. They're likely preparing for all scenarios. We'll explore their countermeasures in upcoming episodes, so stay with us.